Retired teacher.
Well, I know that now. I just wanted to say to everyone here, like I said, it's not so much a question. I did a road trip out there a couple of Fridays ago.
Good for you, yes.
Went to watch my son play hockey in Langton, and then took a road trip. My biggest issue, and I know that you're talking about the Valley Report and the upselling of a two-lane bridge. My biggest question would be, do you not feel that that would just ruin the whole integrity of that road, the atmosphere, the environment, the beautiful bridge?
Yeah, the aesthetics part of that report states that they can put in a concrete precast lower end and Bailey Bridge superficial structure on the top and each side, so it looked like a nice Bailey Bridge. And I'm not opposed to the single lane version of that at all. Doesn't matter. As long as it's not the double wide. You get the double wide in there, people are going to think this is a great way to fly through there and get to Simcoe. And you're right, it just kills that whole area. We have bald eagles in the area. We have tons of wildlife, fox. I see turkey. I see pheasant on a daily basis walking back with my dog. All that stuff gets kind of pushed away when you have to put barriers up all the way along the side. And you probably didn't notice any guardrails down that road at all.
No, and I did notice that to me, when people were talking about the large farm machinery. I mean, I live in Ward 7, so I get to experience a lot of large farm machinery.
Well, a single lane bridge is 15 meters wide. You can haul one through there. I don't know of any combine. My brother-in-law has a combine, and he combines. He likes to go across that bridge, but he says, when it's a single lane, I tow my combine. I tow the head anyway. I can get across if it was a single lane bridge, but not a. He says you don't need a double lane. I don't need one anyway. I can get across as long as it's wide enough to get the big combine machine across. They're happy.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, and the only other farmer that goes across there would be Churchick, and he's sharecropping a thing across on the other side. And that's just for running tobacco back and forth.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. My apologies, as maybe I'm missing something, but is there a reason why there is a large group here today and not when we discuss this?
Because from my understanding, it was put on the end of the agenda, and no one knew what was coming up, and then you had to make a vote. I know in any meeting I've ever been in, you have to have it on an agenda. And if it's a major thing, especially when you're throwing around $275,000 or extra, I would say, let's reconsider this, guys. We got to come back the next day and do that. And I think that's the position you were put in, and that's what we're saying. Just reconsider it. We'd love you just to look at it one more time and try to save some money here. And we as a community don't really need it. I mean, I've been in for 30 years. They've never had a double lane bridge. They've had that single lane. And the Bailey's a little narrow, but the new one would be a little wider anyway. And it'll be built up just the same. It'll still be built up and allowed to flood, but then you're not into making that two-lane bridge, character go all the way through the entire valley. It's a snake winding thing coming from one side, and it's a steep roller coaster coming from the other side. So I just don't see it as being economical and a good business decision for the county right now, especially when we have. By the way, another point I was going to make was that if that was a thing that was going to be done where they're going to make it a throughway to some fantasy or whatever going this way and having it going all the way through to Windsor, I would say that you could probably take that bridge, pick it up, and put it on the concession A area where they need a bridge, because they need one there too. And I was going to call some people from them, but just a little too fast for time for me. So anyway, okay.
Well, Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Michelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Hammond, thank you very much for your presentation. Just one thing I just want to confirm. When we had our original discussion about the 45 bridge, a member of council brought up the fact that the bridge as it is an impediment to farming, and that's how a wider bridge will make life easier and much more efficient for farmers. But I do believe you've already mentioned that there are only a couple of farmers who already farm in that area. They use the bridge. Yeah,
Steve's been going across quite a bit with this.
And the farmers have been doing this for, literally decades.
Yes.
So if this were really an impediment to farming, there would be no farming there, and they would do something else. And one thing I think everybody in this room knows, if farmers have a problem, they'll
come and
figure
tell
it
you.
out, and clearly they have. So I do appreciate you bringing
Yeah,
that up.
one thing I might add as well, and I think Bill was going to bring this up, to fill that or to put any kind of bridge in there, they're going to have to raise the approaches. I think it's 1 meter, 3 meters. I think it's 3 meters, but that would make the level of water north of that bridge raised by 1 foot when it's going to be really flooded. So that means Mr. Boyd's field would be flooded longer. He'd have a harder time getting into that field, and it's a big field back in there. He'd have to have special gates to get down off of all that grading to get into his field, and I know that he's concerned about that, and Bill was speaking on his behalf.
One other thing regarding farmers, the only farmer that was inconvenienced was Mr. Churcher, because he had a farm on one side and he was tobacco farming back and forth. But he's not farming tobacco anymore, and it's not such a big deal. It's going to have his work custom done. And so, and the other farmer, Jim Congrats, who lives right by the bridge, he wants to cross with his tractor and his grain wagons. That's all he's concerned about. So,
Yeah, Jim is corn and beans. I've talked, yeah. He farms beside my house as well.
So,
And so,
oh,
I'm sorry, Madam
no,
Mayor.
of course.
And so you, from your knowledge, and you all live on this road,
Yeah.
you are very familiar with the area surrounding it, you've not heard any reports from farmers who are complaining about this bridge and who are proponents of a big highway bridge?
No, not one.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Do you not think that farmers do not access this bridge simply because it is deteriorated and it is not wide enough? I think if there was a 2-lane bridge put in there, that the farmers in the community would use it.
Well, I don't know which farmers would need it more than the ones that live by the bridge. Anybody going through that area, I know Sylvite, they don't use that bridge. They go across the one north of that to go down 45. They don't come this way at all. I know that and also the Pony Trust Bridge, they could get across that. And the Bailey Bridge, they could take a disc across. It was tricky, but they could take it across. But Mr. Boyd has been coming from the other side. So they're just so used to that single-lane bridge, and I just feel that it's an opportunity for the council to really keep something as it was and not think too far ahead and put yourselves into a position where you're going to have to fork out more money in the future on something that wasn't planned or intended. And I understand what you're saying is that farmers, they've never had it to begin with, though, but there's not a lot of farmers that I know of that go down there. They've already got all their ways of doing what they do, and that bridge isn't going to affect a heck of a lot unless somebody new comes in 30, 40 years. And I don't know how that's going to happen because it's floodplain, really. No one's going to want to buy it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
One thing I noted in your when you talked about the quote from Iron Bridge, you said a 7-year design life. I believe in the Valley Report, I think they said 50, was it?
No, they said 75, but every 20 years, it's going to cost you $1 million to fix it. He also said something about washing and recoating it, and I've never seen anybody wash that Bailey Bridge in my life. That's been down there since '92. And also the Iron Bridge Company said they could galvanize it if they wanted to. They can coat it and galvanize it if you wanted to. They can put a walkway on either side if you wanted to, for fishermen, which would really be appreciated for a lot of those guys.
Well, one of the concerns, actually, I thank you for calling Iron Bridge and getting such a detailed quote to go with this. I made a phone call today, actually, and I spoke with the owner himself. And it was interesting because one of the big concerns with this has been delaying this project. And he recently, the Bailey Bridge is 100 feet, I believe, long.
Yeah.
And he told me the pictures that in the package that I've sent out, you'll see the last 2 photographs. That is from an almost identical bridge, 100 feet, that was purchased by the city of Collingwood for the same reasons, really. And he told me it took them between 1 to 2 months. He thought it was somewhere around 6 weeks to actually build that. He said that they put a metal deck pan underneath, which so they didn't even need to form it on site. It was already ready to go.
Pour on top. Yeah.
And they brought it in. It was installed in 1 day. They poured the concrete, the pans, it was already formed, they poured the concrete, and it took about a week and a half to cure. So the suggestion that this is going to somehow delay the project, that's the part where I really struggle with, because the reason they've come up with prefab bridge is for this reason. So we don't have to be closing. It's something we should be looking at for the causeway as well, realistically, because these roads need to be open. And so to say that this is going to push it into 2020, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if it makes sense to you.
No, it's the 2-lane thing is what I'm really not in favor of. The single lane, I don't care what kind of bridge it is, just don't increase the speed on that road. You're just into more money. That road would have to be bulldozed, basically flat, to do anything right. That would match that 2-lane bridge expectation by drivers. And I talked to him about that single lane bridge as well. I said, what about farmers? Like, what about farmers up there? He says, that's all there is up there is corn and beans, and we have to accommodate them. And that's why we have it this wide. That's why we have it this spec. He gave me a code that I wrote it down, a code, the same code as any highway bridge would have.
CSA S6-14.
Yeah, in that steel, it's what he called it, self-aging steel. It will stay rusty, it'll look rusty, but it'll take, like these big iron boats, they're still not rusted through in the hulls because of the steel.
I think, so self-weathering Corten steel, I believe.
Yeah.
In lieu of galvanized steel or galvanized painted steel, Corten steel has an increased resistance to atmospheric corrosion compared to other steels. Corten will be more cost-effective due to eliminating the amount of handling with painting and galvanizing the bridge. Additionally, maintenance costs are lower as there is no coating or upkeep required. Damaged areas require no coating.
Yeah, and I think the county could be proud of that kind of a bridge, and the county could save money and do something else like it somewhere else.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Were there any other
Thank you.
deputations or? Okay. Oh, perfect.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Shanna Graytrix, and I'm still on the committee for the Norfolk Heritage Committee at this point, but I'm soon to be finishing my term. But I've been secretary for this group since going back to 2007, I believe. And the bridge issue has come up several times for us. Every bridge is unique, and every decision should be unique for making decisions about closing or repurposing. And this one in particular, we made a motion for just on Monday at the Monday meeting, and our motion was that the NHC supports reconsideration of the previous decision regarding the future of the County Road 45 bridge, which was moved by Bob Andrews, seconded by Bob Wood, and carried. As a resident, I can also say that I live in Port Ryerson. We went through a bridge issue years ago with our community, and we did experience a bridge that started out as $700,000 to start with, ended up being $1.3 million, which is a bridge that is larger than the road itself. I feel that that was a waste. We also saw the closing of the Marburg Porter Bridge, and it's every bridge needs to be reconsidered in all of the possibilities. So that is all I have to say, really, about that. And I think it is up to you to reconsider if needed, but keep it in mind for future bridges as well. And please decide get all of the information and the possibilities.
Thank you for coming. Before we'll just take some questions from councillors. Councillor Michelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Greatrix, as obviously you know, and I mentioned earlier in a previous topic in this meeting, that I sit on the Norfolk Heritage Committee with Ms. Greatrix, and I just wanted to correct one thing, and Ms. Greatrix, you are the secretary, but I just recall, because I was at the meeting where that motion was made in support of this single-lane bridge, and I believe that that vote was actually carried unanimously.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it was.
Any further discussion? If I could just get you to hold on 1 second, I'm just going to pass one. I didn't expect you, actually. I'm going to pass one more thing out. What I'm about to hand out, these are some photos. There was a study, actually, even in the city of Waterloo. This is happening everywhere. In the United States, I couldn't find some Canadian statistics. They say that more than 50% of their historic bridges have now gone by the wayside. In Waterloo, even, they were so concerned about maintaining some of these former single-lane bridges that they actually commissioned a report 12 years ago to look at protecting them. And we have never considered protecting them here in Norfolk County this many years later. So some of those bridges are actually kind of similar. One doesn't even have any guardrails, and Waterloo actually has noted that in their report as something at looking at preserving. So I thank you for coming on behalf of the Heritage Committee, and I do think that this is, traffic safety is one component, but there is also this other component as well. So thank you.
Anything else?
One thing I just, councillors, are there any further deputations? The other piece of paper that I handed out to you is just a document in relation to agritourism. As you all know, Councillor Martin and I were at Roma this past weekend, and I had the opportunity to discuss this bridge actually with a couple of ministers, and the feedback that I got was, and I quote, agritourism, agritourism, agritourism. So I provided you each with a fact sheet that describes developing agritourism in Ontario. It speaks to a growing desire by consumers to head outdoors and to the country for more leisure opportunities, and that it is a subset of a larger recreational industry called rural tourism that includes visit to rural settings or rural environments to participate and or experience activities, events, or attractions not readily available in urbanized areas. It goes on to discuss how any agritourism operations are within a 1 to 2 hour drive of large urban centers like Toronto, which together represent about 75% of the province's population. And the fact that the increased urbanization of Ontario's domestic market has resulted in consumers wanting to experience authentic outdoor farm activities. More than ever, they say people are motivated by a desire to experience the authentic and natural resources of a region. Hint, hint, this is not about one bridge. This is about building an entire experience for people when they come to Ontario's garden. Despite the fact that we are Canada's most agriculturally diverse area, we are lagging behind on this front, and we have a huge opportunity right now. I know that we're never going to please everybody, but we did make a decision, and we made a commitment to make the best decisions for all of Norfolk, not just for a few people. Despite the fact that we commissioned a $12,000 report, and despite the fact that the design work is near completion, I am personally imploring you to make the bold decision and do the right thing. Without a plan, we are going to stay exactly where we are, which is exactly where we have been. I heard a quote the other day that said, "The only thing worse than being blind is to have no sight and no vision." Let today be the day that you councillors took a risk and made a bold decision with an outlook towards a new Norfolk. People elected 6 new members on council and a new mayor because they wanted a new vision for Norfolk. They wanted a young council with fresh ideas. Let today be the day that says you aren't afraid to stand up and make a bold move. Better to try and fail than to not try at all, or to sit around and wonder in 4 years what could have been. When we start handing our farmers, all farmers, possibility, they will do great things. If we don't make bold moves, we won't succeed and we will not change. So I hope that as we hear these deputations and moving forward, that we start to look at all the different impacts that a particular decision has, from heritage to road safety, that it's not just about the safety of the bridge, agritourism, which is what needs, again, from every minister, what needs to be the focus of Norfolk County. So thank you for indulging me in those couple minutes, and I guess Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Are we done with deputations?
I believe so, yes.
I was willing to bring this up for reconsideration. I did vote for the two-lane bridge. That was based on the fact that, like if you actually read the reports, and it's a $1.9 million project, but 2/3 of that money is raising up the road bed for about 500 feet so it doesn't flood every spring, because I've been there before. I've seen it flooded just about every year in the springtime. And another part is to widen the channel a little bit to help reduce the flooding, and then building the substructure under the bridge. And then the actual cost of a bridge, it doesn't really matter what kind of bridge on there, they're all around that $500,000 mark. Whether it's a cement bridge, pony truss, Bailey bridge, it's all about the same. It's the rest of the work that is 2/3 of the price. And since we already had, in my mind, over $100,000 tied up in the drawings for the bridge, the environmental assessment, and all those things, and for that amount of, like, it's only about $100,000 difference. Might as well go with what we've got in the books, get it done. Now, there's been certain councillors that have been calling me every day to make sure that we bring this up and discuss it again. But I'd be willing to look at anything, because in previous discussions on this matter, I didn't care whether it was one-lane bridge or two-lane bridge, as long as it carried the weight, it carried the size of, like a tractor could fit through it. You don't need enough room for two tractors to pass each other, but as long as one can get across and the other can get across. So I will leave it up to the rest of you to make sure you change my mind. And but if we go in a different direction, are we going to leave the road alone and just replace the bridge, or are we changing the whole works here? We have to be sure on what we're talking about, because to just change the design of the bridge doesn't really change the price tag. So I will leave it up to the rest of council to lead that discussion.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have our General Manager of Public Works here, who's been involved with this process since he's been on duty here as the GM. I'd like to ask him where we are with expending dollars, and where's this whole project at, and what are your thoughts on the single-lane bridge?
Through the mayor, I can't give you an exact dollar account right now. I'd have to go through some, but I could certainly report back to you. The design component, I understand, is about 90% finished. We're working towards getting the tender documents prepared and issued so that we can have prices and we can meet the earliest part of the construction season, so we can get the job done in 2019. I'm indifferent. I don't have one preference over the other. That's council's choice. The gentleman from Valley, Mr. Elliott, that presented that report at that first meeting in January, basically provided different cost scenarios. And again, he was as well with total agreement. A single lane bridge can fit the bill, but based on the cost and the benefit analysis that the two-lane was recommended. And we're here to provide you a recommendation, and you're free, as always, to make your choice. So that's where we are right now. I wouldn't, if we have to go back to the drawing board, as it were, to do that, we're obviously going to take a bit more time and have a bit more cost. There may be some additional environmental assessment work that might have to be done, but that choice is yours, and we will follow your direction.
So I think, if I could just jump in here, I think Councillor Van Passen has a good point, is that Valley's report considered a one-lane bridge against still raising the roadbed and making all of these changes. With this prefab bridge, there would not be a need to do all of that road work that goes into being able to put that concrete structure across there, correct?
Through you, obviously there was the substructure that was discussed, needs to be done. An opportunity to improve the overall road safety of that during those flood seasons Part of the design includes some sort of means of letting the water travel through culverts under the roadway. Here's an opportunity. It's not just simply the bridge, but the approaches that would be part of the overall cost. To just simply put a new bridge, single lane or other, on an existing abutments and so on, this is your opportunity to improve the approaches, which I think whatever the decision is for the type of bridge, it would make good sense to have that as part of the project.
Well, again, sometimes I think it's wants versus needs in the county, and we have a lot of projects that we need, and this just seems like an extraordinary cost for a low-volume road that has never had a single accident at that bridge. And now we're talking about going in with making these changes. There's significant environmental impact by doing that, as opposed to having a bridge made off-site, having very little impact on the environment, and dropping a new bridge into place. Would you not agree? I mean, there's a lot. Part of the challenge with that environmental assessment, and I question whether or not we would need another one. And if we do, I've been in discussions with people over this. The EA for a 2-lane bridge, I can understand, and I understand how there is a cultural. I can't even remember. I printed out the definition of environment under the EA. However, this isn't changing anything. We've already done the environmental impact of that assessment, where actually we would be affecting the environment less. And as far as the people in the surrounding area, it's not changing anything. So it's not changing anything from the current status. It's really replacing that existing bridge as it is. And so for that reason, I question whether or not a new EA would be required, and certainly if there was something from the MOE, I think it would be very insignificant. And I can't say enough how I don't believe that this would take us any longer. In fact, I still think it would be faster when we look at the fact that a company can produce a bridge, speaking to the owner today, in 6 weeks. They can drop it in 1 day, and it can be concreted in a week and a half. So, Councillor Michelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to, on this very topic, I've received some information from a constituent who has been doing a lot of research and study on this topic. And he told me that it's his belief, and I don't intend to be disrespectful to any professionals, but he believes that there are some errors and some inconsistencies in the engineering report that I think many councillors have relied on to make this decision. And one of the items that he has illustrated to me is that the Iron Bridge Company firm that Mr. Hammond referred to, and also that Her Worship referred to a few moments ago, has submitted a quote that, with the bridge and the improvements and the abutments and the taxes, would be approximately $775,000 total, with and not having the need to make all of these physical improvements and assessments that we've talked about. The real issue here is that engineering report that all of council had access to, and that I realized we paid $12,000 for. One of the inconsistencies that this constituent found and forwarded to me was that in the report, it mentions the fact that they examined several alternative companies and the bridges that they could propose, and one of them was this Iron Bridge Company. It turns out then the constituent called the Iron Bridge Company and asked them if they had ever been contacted by the engineering firm that prepared our report. The answer was absolutely no. They were never contacted. So that information that a lot of us were relying on, that's just one example. I'm just trying to point out to council today, that's one example of a report that may have some errors or inconsistencies, and I'm not sure that we can take the entire report then as being entirely credible if we already have proof that there is at least some confusion or mix-up on the part of the engineering firm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michelli. Councillor Columbus and Councillor Rabbits.
I just wanted to mention, one of the inconsistencies that I heard here tonight was that this bridge is 100 feet long. Well, I went out there 6 weeks ago, and I measured it. It's closer to 170 feet long. So I don't know whether that fits into the formula or not. Thank you. The deck is 170.
Do we have an exact number on the deck?
Madam Mayor, I don't have that information with me, but I could certainly verify that.
Does anybody here know the number?
In the Valley report, it states 35 meters, and we've measured it.
I believe the Valley report said the same thing as well, so I guess there must be an inconsistency between your measure and the Valley report. Councilor Rabbit,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the chair, I'd like to address just some concerns that I have with how we obtained the quote from Iron Bridge Fabrication Incorporated. I do find it troubling that this consultancy or this engineering firm has acknowledged that they weren't contacted for the bid. I do find that troubling information to hear. I also find it quite troubling that we would be entertaining a potential quote that hasn't gone through our RFP or procurement policy. It helps catch those that are trying to obfuscate that and get a bid that's well below, not meeting qualifications, and perhaps sneaking something in that otherwise wouldn't have been considered. And so looking at this information, the Iron Bridge Fabrication, we did have that quote stated January 24th. I believe it was obtained and created in one day. And I know that haste makes waste, and if the criticism is we've rushed into this decision, supporting this quote as it currently stands, I find would be quite a hasty decision if it was in fact created in one day and presented to this council for review. I've heard that this bridge, as proposed by Iron Bridge Fabrication Incorporated, would be maintenance-free or very low maintenance, and in fact, when you get into the 12-page quote that was provided, arguing, I guess, against the 91-page report that we had contracted through Valley, there's some concerns that I have therein regarding maintenance. So a steel structure can corrode. One of the options was to have a galvanized steel coating. If opened, and I quote, the material will start to rust and corrode if not repaired right away. Maintenance would follow as per below. We have painted steel options. We have galvanized and painted steel options in this report as well. That's not public information, I believe, at this point in time. So I just want to acknowledge that, steel corrodes, it does rust. The idea that, if you don't maintain it, it will degrade. I think that needs to be acknowledged. Saying that it's a maintenance-free option, in my opinion, is not correct. Can't be substantiated. And I do know that this particular bridge that's failed, I believe was a steel structure, the Bailey Bridge, put in 1992. It has since failed and it has corroded. And I know that maintenance in this area might not be very forthcoming in terms of washing off the road salt and things of that nature. This quote that we're looking at, it's assuming that vandalism will be taking place in this location, again requiring maintenance, or that the steel will not open up and corrode, and there are a lot of hidden costs to this quote in terms of patching and repairing an iron structure. So this is information that would need to be brought to light in a much larger report. I would be expecting, if we were to entertain something from Iron Bridge, we'd be looking at a 100-page report that's going to hopefully address some of the maintenance concerns that are very outstanding in the quick quote that was prepared for us here. So, I just wanted to acknowledge that, what I've seen just leads to more questions. I do appreciate the cost, and I worry about the longevity of the Iron Bridge that's been prepared and presented to us.
So first of all, I don't think that anybody has ever been suggesting that we would just call up Iron Bridge and use this quote. It's called doing research, and I appreciate that the community went out and did this. When we made the motion at the first CIC meeting, this was our understanding that what our staff would do and call various companies and get something like this, not go out and commission a $12,000 report. Councillor Michelli.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. And I just want to sort of reiterate what you just mentioned there. I do believe that this is something, and I'm going to ask Mr. Baird, is this something that staff could take a bigger part in providing some of the information that we need as far as RFPs and the whole contacting of other companies?
Through the mayor, just so I understand, is council directing staff to contact other manufacturers?
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Baird. I'm asking if that would be a possibility if that were the wish of council.
If whatever council decides and directs staff, we're pleased to do.
Okay, thank you very much. And also, Madam Mayor, if I can just add one thing. And just a small correction, Councillor Ravitz, the bridge that we are currently debating was put in its current location in 1992. It was moved from another location in Port Rowan, and in fact, there is pretty much consensus that the exact age of it cannot be determined. So it is a very, very old bridge.
Councillor Van Passen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Before we get too carried away, a little thing about process. If I made a motion to reconsider, that would be Mr. Columbus's or Councillor Columbus's original motion, and I forget the number of it. Would we have to bring that back up and defeat that and then do something new before we get into the discussion of what the new we are going to do? And if that happens, I hope that whatever motion comes forward is very clear direction to our staff about whether we are just replacing the bridge or whether we're replacing the bridge and doing the road work and all of those things. Because there's no doubt in my mind that if we just replace the bridge, we probably can save $900,000 to $1 million, because that's what the price of the included road work would be. If we're going to do both, then we're not looking at much difference.
The impression I get from the residents, the idea of changing the characteristics of the road is not what we want to be doing. We want to keep the road the same for the safety of the road itself. For myself, I've had such a hard time over the past couple weeks because I was out at a meeting with Rick from the Good Bread Company out at the church because of delays and things that had been going on there. And it just blows my mind still that he was required to do a traffic study in Victoria to put in a small bread company, and yet we have not done a traffic. There has been no material, despite a $12,000 report that was commissioned and all the work previous. Nobody has talked about the what if we put in this bridge and people start using this as a cut through. How is that going to increase traffic? This is what consultants do. They forecast numbers. I have seen no forecast of numbers for future traffic outlook, and as a result, how that would impact that road. And roads also have to meet certain standards under the MTO. So once a road doesn't meet the standard, once a road goes into a higher volume traffic situation, that the characteristics of that road change, and it's going to have to be changed. And we haven't factored even that into these costs right now. Councillor Van Passen.
If you can remember some of the things I said when we discussed it before, that's exactly one of the points I brought forward, that if we upgrade the road and fix the bridge, the traffic count right now is 353. You're allowed a single lane bridge as long as it's below 400. I have no doubt that as soon as we fix the road and fix the bridge, that the count's going to be over 400. And it is, I don't know if it's a shortcut, that's just my beautiful rustic country drive to go out that way. You know, you go down to 7th, you do a little zigzag, you go down 45, all the way into St. Thomas and points west. But it is a nice, lovely road. And again, I was just doing it based on numbers. So, but if we're going to change our mind, make sure we give staff clear direction so that they know what we want done, that we're not leaving them stranded again. So that's all I ask.
Councillor Micheli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I totally agree with Councillor Van Passen. We do want to get this right. I think I just want to come back to the fact that there is no one on that road or any of the businesses that are connected to that road or anybody close to that road who is opposed to a single lane bridge. They all want a single lane bridge. Many of them are sitting right there. They all want a single lane bridge. I think this is an opportunity, for Norfolk County. I've heard twice today, in some different contexts, but officially, from people who say they are so disappointed in Norfolk County. Well, here we have everybody on that road wants a single lane bridge for all the many reasons that have come up here now. I can't see how, in the face of that desire by constituents who we are responsible to say, no, you know what, all of you want this, but we know better. I just don't think that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michelli. I do have another email. I don't know if everybody's received this one. This was from Mr. Andrews. Oh, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Baird, we're talking about speed of implication here, where if we go with the project, it is 90% complete. We definitely will see it in 2019. In your experience with prefab bridges, after we go through the process of retendering, go through the process of design, knowing the speed of implication with prefab, could we still see the bridge in 2019? Or need to do a little more research for that one?
Through the mayor, I don't have an abundance of experience with prefab bridges. We've done many pedestrian scale ones. They can be manufactured quickly, but again, the project isn't just the supply and delivery of a pre-manufactured bridge. It's the abutments, the piers, the approaches, all of that work that has to be done. So whether it can be finished in 2019, I mean, we all want that road open. That's certainly our desire. Something needs to be done.
I think coming back to Councillor Van Passen's point, Ryan, or Councillor Taylor, would be that we're not going to change the characteristics of the road in this case, so there would be far less road work to be able to go along with this. And again, the reason that engineers invented prefab bridges is to speed this process along. Myself personally, after speaking with a couple of the manufacturers, sometimes what we do is, what's that saying, putting the apple before the cart or the horse or whatever, but we often go and we do the design work and then we go to tender on the bridge. As Mr. Baird said, we haven't done this before in Norfolk County. This is something new, but the value in doing this is that we have a number of other bridges that are coming due that need to be done, that are like this, the causeway included. And if we have the opportunity to save money, to preserve the heritage, to benefit agritourism, does it matter if we've already spent some money on design work? Does it matter if it's going to take a bit of extra time? I don't think it is going to take extra time. I think it's actually going to take less time. But the one thing that I think that we should look at is if we were to say today to put this to tender for a single lane prefab bridge without changing the characteristics of the road, to keep the road as is, that we put it out for tender before the design work. And then we allow that the company that that is successful in the RFP process, they work with designers all the time. So they've got a number of people that they can go to, and they can then, what they told me is the problem is you do the design work first, but you don't know the weight of the bridge, the width of, let the bridge company say, okay, this is how we're going to do the bridge, and then have them go out and do the necessary design work to go along with it. Too often, it's the wrong way around. We do the design, but again, it's a unique situation because we haven't done this prefab type of work before. So I think it comes to kind of reversing that around. Any further discussion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering if staff would like to respond to that particular process, if that is an option that we have available.
Sure. Through the mayor, Councillor, for something like this, it's not just like we want a half-ton pickup, give me a quote. Something like this, it's very hard for a manufacturer to bid something without having a proper design, because they'll design the bridge to fit. However, I mean, what's the span? What's the width? How is it all going to work? I totally respect the approach that Mayor Chop is suggesting, but I would, for something as important as this, you should always have a proper design in place. If you want to, we heard earlier today in the drainage area, people would be reluctant to provide a bid. They could literally lose their shirt if they provide a bid that's substandard, or there's all sorts of extras in that. And we see that. It's not uncommon to have on a poorly planned or executed contract where you don't have all the specifications and all the details in the design. You get hit with change orders and prices after the fact and all these negotiated pieces. So long and short, a design, an RFP, come to us, tell us what your solution is. There's a couple of different ways to do that. Generally a tender is, here's what we want, give us a price. Everybody knows they're bidding on the exact same thing. The RFP is, you tell us what you can do. Here's the problem, you tell us what the solution could be. They involve quite a bit more work, which is problematic. Again, that's all just time. But design should always be part of that, even if it is somewhat scaled back. It's not the full-blown, end-to-end, whole road section. But this is a really unique location that the road does flood many times, not just in the springtime. And there have been incidents where people's cars have been swept off. And, I think we as a municipality have to take those things into consideration and make an improvement. So we're not open for lawsuits or, being charged that, we've constructed something substandard. We rely on the experts to help us with that.
This was, I can give you his number tomorrow, even if you'd like to call it. This was a recommendation right from them, and this is, I think, how some other counties that do prefab bridges approach it for speed and cost savings. But again, you could also go to tender for the design project. That's not really the biggest issue here, but that was, I asked him if that was something that would help speed along the process, and he said yes. So that was my only, Councilor Michele.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question again to Mr. Baird on this topic. Mr. Baird, you just mentioned that this is a very unique situation. It's a very unique location. It's a very unique environment in many ways. I think that is part of the point that these good people want to make. They want to keep it that way. It's also unique in its picturesque beauty, in its heritage value, in its basically its tourism value. I know that Mr. Hammond earlier, I'm sorry, I believe it was Mr. Knowles, mentioned that the amount of motorcycle traffic on that road on weekends and particularly on Friday the 13th for people going to Port Dover is huge. And of course and part of the reason why, and I hope you don't mind if I just mention something that's sort of a personal knowledge of my own. My brother lives in St. Thomas, and he is he's not a member of a biking club, but a good friend of his is, and they have told him they specifically go to Port Dover on County Road 45 for its beauty and for the kind of the fun part of going over the single lane bridge. And those are people coming here in large part because they want to go on that bridge, and frankly they want to go on some of our other unique historic bridges as well. And I think that this is not just a plan for this particular bridge, although that is at issue today, but also for many of our bridges going forward. And so I just want to comment on the value of having the single lane bridge that is over and above any of the sort of the engineering points of view. Not that they are not important, but I just want to bring that up. I just also want to mention, so often in life, when we get a chance, to think about something a bit further, have another look at something, that allows us to examine someone else's different points of view. I think we've had that brought to us by the people who live there, and I think that's what I like about this group of people here. they're not just people with an opinion about single-lane bridges. They live there, and they are the people who I give the most credibility to. And so, you know, when I know earlier Councillor Rabbits mentioned, you know, when you make decisions in haste, you often regret them. I agree with that totally. And so we are not asking for this to totally get done today, obviously, but we would like to make all of the necessary moves so we can learn more about what we can do and give this single-lane bridge and give these good people the consideration that they richly and very much deserve. And that, I think, is the key here. This is about people. And I know Mr. Baird mentioned the safety issue and the bridge floods, and there, I understand there have been a car or two has gone off the bridge, and I understand that. I also know that sometimes safety has several sort of aspects to it. I compare that to the possibility of two transport trucks traveling down that road, going in opposite directions at 80, 90 kilometers an hour, and I realize that not all of council has been on that road, but I've been on that road many times. I used to take that road to work. Two cars have a hard time. You've got to be very careful, someone coming towards you on certain sections of that road. I think that is a safety issue. Anyway, so also, you know, I just have to say, you know, that we had this petition here with all of those names of the people who are there. They're not here because they have an opinion about bridges. They're here because they live there. And you know, I just think we've got here, the entire community wants a single lane bridge. And as I said before, you know, I think we need to give that the most credibility. You know, I don't know how we can ignore them. One of the things I guess I have to say, when I became a councillor, and I admit I'm very new at this, but you know, one of the things I very much wanted to do when I decided to run for council is I wanted to do things that help people. And here's an opportunity that they're sitting right there. I want to help them, and I think council does too. And so, you know, I thought this functioned as a democracy where we adhered to what we believed and heard were the wishes of the people, not what we decided was best for them, and they'll just have to take what we give. That's not the reason we are councillors, and that's not the reason why we're doing this. So, you know, and as I mentioned earlier too, you know, there are people, they are disappointed in Norfolk County in some areas, various, you know, topics, categories. You know, maybe it's time for us to stop disappointing people and honor their wishes. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Chop. I don't know really what else I can add to that after Councillor Michelli spoke. What I'm hearing today is that we've potentially received some misinformation in a report. There has been minimal communication to the public, who has the highest level of vested interest. There's additionally overwhelming interest for a single lane from the residents who live nearest this location, and there are concerns for safety, speed, and otherwise. Through a miscommunication that may have been council's own fault, there was a tender put out that ended up costing us when we didn't realize we were going out of house. But at that same time, I did believe that we were requesting for single lane prefab structures. So I guess before I go any further, I'm looking for clarification. If we go back to this Valley report, was the whole discussion not fully based around one versus two lanes? Was that not the entirety of?
It was based
prior to
on
that, sorry, prior to the report.
Putting in a concrete one lane with changing the characteristics of the road. And again, as Councillor Van Pass said, that's where the savings weren't considered of, hey, let's keep the road the same and let's put in a new bridge. And there's the greater cost savings, and that's why there was such a small spread in the Valley report.
For me, I'm going to go out here on and take a leap, and I'm going to put a motion forward that we ask staff to tender out one-lane prefab structures.
Okay, so first of all, Councillor Columbus's motion just needs to come back again. And then if that motion was then defeated, then we would be able to hear
Sure.
your motion to follow. So I have Councillor Columbus's old motion, if you'd like me to read it for you, sir, or if you have it. Okay. Okay, he's just given it over to me. It says that council directs staff to proceed to tender for a 2-lane concrete bridge for the replacement of the Road 45 bridge. So moved by Councillor Columbus and seconded by... It doesn't need to be, okay, so... And discussions, Councillor Columbus?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to support that motion that I put on the floor a while back, this county road, it's County Road 45, okay? The design work is nearing completion, we heard. And I heard a number that we've got close to $100,000 invested in design work, close to that. A single lane bridge, we heard a few weeks ago, it was 10% lower cost than a 2-lane bridge. That would be a single lane portable bridge, I guess what we're talking about, steel bridge. We heard that the entire, that the locals support a 1-lane bridge, but what about the people outside the local area? I'm sure if they had an interest, they'd fill this room too for a 2-lane bridge, if they were not a special interest group. A 1-lane bridge, steel bridge, we've heard it before, requires more maintenance and has a shorter life. We already spent $12,000 on a study to look at a 1-lane bridge versus a 2-lane bridge through the consultant report, and it for sure has delayed things by at least several weeks. We're going to delay construction again to the point where this bridge will not be usable till 2020, whether it's a 2-lane or 1-lane, and we cannot delay that. We should keep our eye to the future, because if there's a 2-lane bridge there, I'm sure there will be more than 400 vehicles a day using it. The reason they don't use this bridge now, well, first of all, it's closed right now, so they can't use it. And the other reason is because it's a 1-lane bridge. And if it were a 2-lane bridge, I'm sure more people would use it. There was a question came up about farm equipment. Again, I would think that if it's a 2-lane bridge wider than the 14 feet that it is right now, more farm equipment would be crossing it, because when farmers rent land, they rent land all over the place, and they need this 2-lane bridge to access their fields. That's why I'm maintaining my motion on the floor. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Rabbits?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through the chair to council. Behooves me to respond to some of Councillor Michelle's comments regarding safety, democracy. I feel that we cannot allow a vocal minority to outweigh the greater good. And while we were elected to represent our constituents and their best interests, I feel that there are significant public safety concerns that are outstanding on this road. It's very narrow, it's winding, and I've heard that we have vehicle traffic cutting into your front driveways. I'm trying to picture a small child or someone in front of your driveway being struck by a vehicle, and what part I may play in that worst case scenario coming to fruition. Trying to picture 2 transport trucks trying to safely cross paths on a single lane bridge, and I can't envision how a 2-lane structure would worsen the public safety of vehicular traffic on this particular artery in Norfolk County. For these reasons, I support the 2-lane structure, and I hope that my maybe words here aren't falling on deaf ears. I feel that it is in the public interest to widen the bridge itself. I made a commitment during my campaign. If I'm going to solve one problem, I'm not going to create 2 more. I want to be moving forward, and change has come to Norfolk County one way or another. We're going to get this job done, and I feel that if speed on the road is a concern, then we should address that concern. Perhaps with this new road, we should be maintaining the current speeds so that folks aren't increasing their speed when they're crossing over this area. And if we keep a keen eye to public safety throughout our conversations and deliberation, then we can maintain good public safety on our roads and ensure that we don't have an accident in the near future in this area.
Yeah, so